Hello, everyone, and welcome to another version of You Need a Miracle. I today have a guest with me, and I'd like to introduce you, a dear friend and a colleague here at Faith City Mission, and that's Bill. So glad you're here. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
You know, I asked Bill to come on to the program and tell his story because it's an extraordinary story of a prodigal son finding redemption. And not only that, but becoming a very great man, a very, very powerful man in the spirit and in the kingdom of God. And I just think you'll be inspired by his story, and it'll also put your hair on end. It's so amazing what he went through and what he came out of. And so, Bill, tell me a little bit about your childhood.
Okay. Well, I'll start from the very beginning. When I was born, my mom was 14 whenever she got pregnant with me, and 15 when she gave birth to me. So I was raised by my grandparents, which was a good thing because my grandma made sure that I went to church. And so at a young age, at like 7 years old, I raised my hand to get saved. But at the age of 12, I started learning in Sunday school what it truly meant to be saved. So I went on a Bible retreat to New Mexico, in the Goliad Mountains, and at Mount Goliad, and I gave my life to the Lord there. And I had a Holy Spirit encounter at this time, which was kind of odd because I was raised Baptist, and they don't do that so much, but that's okay. But they get you saved, and they got me saved, and I learned a lot there. But when I came home, it was almost immediately after that my real mom came back into my life. And when she did, she was young, and she was using drugs, smoking marijuana, and she introduced me to that almost immediately after this happened. And everything that was important to me changed. I guess I had the genetics for addiction. And so everything went from sports, school, church, to sex, drugs, and rock and roll immediately. And it just advanced as I went on through the years. In high school, I started doing cocaine, and then whenever that led into methamphetamines. And so methamphetamines is where I found my addiction, my true addiction.
Your new best friend.
Oh yeah. And so in the course of all this, though, I'm having a family. I'm raising a family. I married my high school sweetheart, and she got pregnant. I was 21, she was 20. I found out she was pregnant, and I asked her to marry me because I didn't know my dad, and I wanted to make sure that my kids knew me. And over the course of the next 3 years, we had children, 1, 2, and 3 years old. So my children didn't even have a full year between them. And as addiction does, it destroyed my relationship with my wife. The marriage didn't work. And about 2 years after our youngest daughter, we separated and then became divorced. And me being on my own was a train wreck. I just really got into my addiction. I got into a bar fight where I really hurt a guy really bad. I broke bones, put him in the hospital for quite a spell, and ended up getting 8 years probation for this. Being on that probation, I did pretty good. It kind of made me have like a goal to get off the probation. But in the last year of that, I had 8 years. I had done 7 years, and I got strung out on meth again. And I called the probation officer and told him I'm not coming up there no more. I'm all messed up. Y'all are just gonna have to catch me when you catch me. So I went on the run. I went on the run for long enough that they actually put me on Amarillo's top 10 most wanted. This top 10 most wanted that they put me on was the actual last one that they advertised the way that they did back then, because several people were killed in apprehension of them on this one. So I ran for about 5 years, and I ended up getting caught in Lubbock after running and running and running. I can't tell you how far down the rabbit hole I went. It was just terrible. No connection with any kind of spirit. If you are on methamphetamines, you're dead inside. Your spirit just dies. It's demonic.
But it's highly addictive.
Oh yes.
The chemical is highly addictive.
It's highly addictive, but the lifestyle, I think, is what it was for me. All the easy money, of course, the sex that's involved. It's just it's an insane way to live. And as running, being on the run, I didn't have any other income, so that's how I made my money. And I ended up getting caught in Lubbock. Texas Rangers caught me. I'll never forget the day that they caught me. I was out in my car searching for the keys to my car because I'd lost the key to my car at the Barcelona Motel in Lubbock, and I heard a gun be activated, and it stuck to the back of my head. And this man says, "My name's Dusty McCord. I'm a Texas Ranger, and I'm here alone. I will use this."
Oh my God.
And I said, "What seems to be the problem?" And he called me by my Christian name. He said, "Are you Harlan Shaw?" I said, "Oh, you know who I am. That's the problem." I'll be honest with you, I was glad it was over. I'd ran so long, and I'd ran so hard, and I tore myself up so bad. And I'd left my mom and my kids, and I really was glad it was over. The running was over. I'd finally been caught, and I lived through it. So I got sentenced to 8 years TDC. But let's go back to one. I went to county jail, and I called my sister. My mom wouldn't answer the phone. I called my sister, and I asked my sister. I said, "Get my money and bond me out." I had some money on the outside. She said, "Mom doesn't want you out. She's tired of watching you destroy yourself." And so I told my sister, I said, "I don't care. Go get my money and get me out of here." She said, "Why don't you turn to God?" Now, you got to understand, when we were kids, I'm the one that kind of led my sister to Christ. And I said to her, when she said, "Why don't you turn to God?" I said to her, "What kind of God would put me in a place like this?" I was in Potter County Jail, and it is a tough place. It's a hard place to be. She said, "I'm not trying to hear that out of you," and hung up on me. Now, the only person in the whole outside free world that would answer my phone call just hung up on me. I'm mad. 30 years old. I'm a pretty good sized man. So my crazy self thought, I'm gonna bust out of this jail cell. I'm gonna beat all the guards up in this place and leave. I wasn't right. So in Potter County, they have these big glass windows. And I got all the way to the back of the cell, and I ran as hard as I could, and I dove into this window like a running back trying to cross the goal line, and it rejected me, Jenna. It rejected me with not a doubt, and I hit that thing, and it shot me back the other way.
My goodness.
And when it did this, there was a noise that went through this jailhouse, boom! And when I fell back the other way, there's these little round metal seats around the chairs that you sat at, and I hit my head on that. So I just brained myself this way, and then I brained myself this way, and this little guy just picks me up, sets me in the seat, and says, "Be quiet and be still." And he's watched this whole thing go down. So I'm sitting there, and the guards run around, they make a lap, and then they go, and he goes, "I just got a new book. Would you like my old one?" And I said, "Sure." I needed something to read, so he handed me a Bible.
Oh, goodness.
I just denied God, you know. I knew God I had a Holy Spirit encounter in New Mexico. I could not deny God, but I did. So I opened that Bible, and I just opened it and read where I landed, and it was Psalms 142. Psalms 142 says, "I cry out loud to the Lord. I lift my voice to the Lord for mercy. I pour out my complaint before him. I pour out my complaint before him. In the path where I walk, men have hidden a snare for me. Look to my right and see no one's concerned for me. No one cares for my soul. I cry out to you, O Lord. I say, you are my portion in the land of the living. Rescue me from those who pursue me, for they are too strong for me. Set me free from my prison that I may praise your name. Everything that happened in that moment was in that song. It's my life song now. And so I realized I was wrong in what I did. And so I started reading the Bible while I was in there. I ended up getting sentenced to 8 years. I went to Abilene to the Middleton unit. And when I get down there, there's this thing that they say when you're in jail, don't get jailhouse religion. Don't get jail.
Oh, really?
And it's a big thing down there. Well, I had this guy that knew me from Amarillo, knew me from the streets, and he had gotten into going to church there and everything. And he really found, he found God there. And so he's trying to get me to go. And I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna go, because everybody had fed that to me. And so finally, just to get him to stop, I said, okay, I'll go. So I go to this church service, and it's a big unit, and it's a lot of people. And I go in there, I'm trying to be the tough guy, because you're around all these men. You gotta play the part, and, everyone tries to. And I get in there, and there's a little old lady, I'm talking old, is singing Amazing Grace, and my heart melts watching her sing. And then I sat down. I'm about to tear up with this lady singing. And then the little old man, who's probably 10 years older than her, ambles up to the podium, and he said, I don't know why. I was going to speak on something else, but the Lord told me to speak on Psalms 142.
Oh my goodness.
And I mean, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I started going to church in there, and I'm telling y'all this because it led to this moment when I was on a different unit. Whenever a lady, I went to a church service there, and she was walking up and down the aisles talking, and she stopped right beside me, and she spoke in tongues, which I was raised Baptist, so that was kind of odd to me. And she looked right at me and she said, you're going to do great things in the church. That was her words to me. So I'm like, yeah, right. I'm in here to sell a tattoo motor at this point. On this one, I'm a handful regardless. And so it's like, yeah, right. But I heard it. She said that to me. Mm-hmm. And as I went to prison, I actually got blessed in prison. I mean, I went from being working in the maintenance doing electricity to becoming a trustee, being the regional director's boy, which is like way over a warden's boy. It's like as high up as you can be, because I did the electricity thing. And then so they moved me from there. They said, because you're in transfer facility for 2 years. That time was up. I couldn't be the regional director's boy anymore. So they moved me from there to Gibb Lewis, which they said, if you can make it there, you'll get your first parole. And I did. So God blessed me even in there. And so I get out, and I'm doing parole. I've got all my kids living with me. I'm being sober. I got to spend the last 3 months of my grandma's life with her. She got to see me have a good job and be healthy and taking care of my kids. Well, my wife came back into our lives, my ex-wife, and she took the kids. I don't do real well alone by myself. I relapsed. When I relapsed, I went from, my mom left me the house, and I went from owning this home, having a job, I was working for the city at the time, having everything set up for me. I was set up well, and I lost it all within months. Months, everything. I was homeless. I was walking the streets, just looking for the next high. A lot of people would let me crash on their couch. There was times when it was raining or cold, I would go to a park and sleep in the public bathrooms in the parks. Whatever it was, whatever I had to do. I didn't know about Faith City at that point in my life. And so one day I was staying over on Grand Street in the Boulevard. I needed to go over to a friend's in San Jacinto. I was riding a bicycle, and I passed by Face City, where it used to be, and I seen all these homeless people that I knew from the streets standing out there and asking what they were doing. And they said, we're gonna go in there and get something to eat. And I was like, well, that sounds great to me. Because at that time I weighed like 165 pounds. I'm 6'1", so that's really thin for a man that's that tall. And so I was starving. I went inside. It's the first time I ever been in Face City. And I didn't know what it entailed. I didn't know I was gonna have to sit through a church service. But I come in, and the security, the guys in the program were really kind and polite. They seen me. You could tell their hearts went out to me, because you could tell that I was broken and torn down. And I sat down, and on this day, this little lady gets up there, starts speaking, and it was you. And Miss Jenna says these words. I don't remember the whole service, but I remember this. She says, there's somebody in this room that's gonna do great things in the mission. Now, that lady that said that whenever I was in jail or in prison, that flashed to me. You said it, the Holy Spirit hit me, and I was like, oh, she's talking about me, man, she's talking about me. But at the same time, I'm thinking, look at the life you're living. There's no way she's talking about you. Well, we get up to go eat after the service is over. And the lady sitting in front of me and the lady sitting beside me looked at me and said, she was talking about you. Wow. Now, if you seen me, you would have never thought that you were talking about me, you know. I smelled bad. I was wearing a wife beater, you know, bald head. I looked like your average inmate. But God sees through all that. Mm-hmm. The Holy Spirit sees through all that. So now I know about Face City. And I start coming more on a more regular basis, because there's free food. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed the worship. I really enjoyed the worship part of it. The speakers, there were different ones, but the one that first day impacted me. It was like, I walked in the door, God heard, seen, and he was out to change things in my life. So one night, I'm over about 6 blocks from the mission at an illegal gambling joint. It's a slots place. And they only knew me as Blue Eyes in there, because you didn't really tell everybody your real name. And so on this night, is 4 in the morning, I pushed the button and I win $800. Well, $800 to me is a big chunk of change at that point. And I would yell out, whoop, Billy Shaw just won the money. And this lady that was sitting next to me, that had sat next to me for 4 years, looks over at me and goes, do you know Heather? And I said, that's my daughter. She said, would you like to see a picture of your granddaughter? I'd never seen my granddaughter. The day that my daughter gave birth to my granddaughter, I came up there and I was strung out, and she said, I don't want to see you. I don't want my kids to know you like this. And so I left, and I never turned around and went back. So this lady pulls out this picture of my granddaughter, and it looks so much like my daughter. I had a moment of clarity. My spirit said, I want that. They deserve to have their dad in their lives. I didn't have my dad, so that's always been kind of a driving force for me. So I went to Face City at that point and stood underneath that awning until they opened the doors at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I applied for the program. I didn't do the program perfect. I had a hard time. I come in there and there was so much brokenness that I had to fix. And it takes time, it really takes time. But as I was going through the program, I was there for 30 days. A girl that I knew from the street comes up there and gets something to eat and looks at me and says, I can't make it out here on my own. Well, I've had 30 days clean, I'll make it now.
Oh gosh.
That's a joke. I ended up getting in trouble for shoplifting at Walmart and getting 90 days in jail. Mm. And if you leave the program, you get 90 days, you can't come back. 2 days after I was in jail 2 days after I left, 90 days in jail, guess what I did? Right back to Faith City, and I did the year. I did really well. I did the year, got to be on the security team. And being in the program as a student, you get to help out homeless people. You get to give back what was given to you. And me being from the homeless part of a lot of the guys in the program aren't from that, but me being from that, it meant so much to me to be able to do that for the people out there. And I wanted them to have what I had. And so I gave it with all my heart. I graduated the program. I went out and started doing bricklaying and bricklaying just kind of led me back down into that trap because I was working 6 days a week, sun up to sundown. I wasn't focused on my program. I wasn't focused on my church. And I relapsed for 6 days this time, 6 days.
We're getting better.
We are getting better. 6 days after 15 months of clean time, and I was standing in this shed smoking drugs with this guy. He was having the time of his life, and I'm like, I'm in the pits of hell, Jenna. This is not where I need to be.
Wow.
I called the people at ARAD. I went to the ARAD program after this. I called the people in ARAD and said, hey, I need to come back. I need just to come back. I've got 6 days that I've messed up. They said, get yourself to Faith City. Okay, so I got up there, Raymond, everybody opened their hearts to me, opened the doors to me, and I went through the ARAD program. Then, after completing the ARAD program, I went to work with a gentleman that did remodeling, and while I was working with him, the job came available at Faith City for the Watchman team for security. And at first I didn't apply because I was afraid that if I applied and I didn't get the job, the people that loved me weren't accepting me. That was a big deal. But Raymond, being Raymond, says, go apply. You never know, go apply. So I had a dream the night before I applied. And in that dream, God said to me, well, you asked me a question in the dream. You said, what qualifies you for this? And God said to me, I qualify you. No matter if they say yes or they say no, it's my decision.
Wow.
So I went and I applied. And when we went into the interview, you asked me that question, and I think I answered with, I have dreamt this. And I just don't want whoever you choose to quench the spirit that we all have created here. I don't know what effect that had on my interview, but I did get the job. And since then, I have been able to see so many miracles.
Yes.
So much freedom given to our student body, and I get to be that guy now. I get to be the guy that helps them to walk through the tough times, to love them when they're unlovable.
And how many times did you and I lay hands on people and saw instant healing? Remember that?
The Holy Spirit just hit me.
I know.
Okay, there's been quite a few. The miracles that, I think the one that sticks out for me the most, there was a lady that came in that's deaf. You remember her? And she had that big knot on her neck.
That tumor.
Yeah, and we were praying, and you said, place your hand on that. And as we were praying, you were praying, I was just speaking in tongues. And I felt that thing dissolve beneath my fingers.
I remember that.
That's my reality now, Jenna.
Yes.
That's my reality.
That's what we
now.
expect now.
Yeah, and when it doesn't happen is when you're like, what did I do wrong? Or did I do something wrong? And it's never that. But it happens more often than it doesn't.
And of course, we saw it where she was instantly healed.
Yes.
Completely. And she had cancer.
Yes.
That was cancer. And
Yeah.
she was healed.
Yes.
It came back and brought me a bouquet.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that was incredible. And then I think there was the woman that was pregnant and the baby was dead in the womb.
Yes.
And the baby was raised from the dead.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that day.
That was confirmed by the medical staff.
That's the day you had never spoken in tongues before, right?
I tried it one time in the sound booth, and I never prayed for anybody. I was just like, I'm going to pray for myself, and it worked for I felt it happen. But that was the first time I laid hands on somebody and prayed for them in tongues, and it just seemed like my hands were on fire.
Yes, our hands were on fire. Oh, it was crazy.
And
It
she
was crazy.
was saying, "You're burning my back with your hand." Do you remember? Because it was just right there. It's.
And then I had my hand on her belly, and all of a sudden it kicked. I said, "Did you feel that?" She goes, "I did. I felt the baby kick." And it was a great day, wasn't it?
Yes.
We've had such a great
There's
time.
been many times that stuff like that's happened. The gentleman that you and Maddie were praying for that was on the scooter. Remember the scooter?
Yes, he was paralyzed. He'd had a stroke.
And he ended up going and coming back and telling us.
Yeah, he got healed that night.
Yeah.
He was anyway. That was a great story too. What a wonderful experience to get to participate in the kingdom. Unbelievable the things. And look where you came from. And God knew all along what you were going to do in the kingdom.
Yes.
And He put a love in your heart for the homeless.
Yes.
And that to me is the greatest thing that when and the Lord did it for me too. I remember I was a volunteer back then, and I'm walking in chapel praying for the homeless, and my heart's going out to, and the Lord said, "Clear as the bell, you see, Jenna, I put my love for the homeless, I shed abroad my love for the homeless in your heart." And I wept because I couldn't believe our good fortune and how we are so privileged.
We are privileged.
We're privileged to get to serve them.
It's an honor.
It's an honor to treat them with the most dignity and to serve them and love them and help them.
Every day.
It's a great job,
It
isn't
is.
it?
It is.
It's a great job. Golly, I'm glad that you all got to come and hear Bill's story and the transformational power of God in one life, who then turned around and changed so many other lives and has had so much impact on other people that come into, sometimes they come into they have no intentions to come into the mission and get in the program. They're there to get a meal or a jacket or a pair of boots. And yet Bill is the little evangelist. And so he loves them into the mission so they can get clean and sober. And then we see their lives completely transform and go out and do great things in the kingdom. And it's so much fun. I am so glad you came and told your story. I had heard snippets, but I hadn't heard the whole story together at one time. And so thank you so much for sharing, being vulnerable with us, and
Thank you for giving me
the good and the bad and the ugly, right?
Yes.
So God bless you guys. Thanks so much for joining us. Take care. Have a good day.
Be sure and get your copy of Jenna Raleigh Taylor's Signs and Wonders 101, 101 Days of Miracles, real-life stories that build your faith. Buy it today on Amazon.com or on signsandwonders101.com.